Hello, my name is Dr. Kurt Sander, and this is Music Theory Simplified. In our last lesson, we looked at Roman numerals, and specifically how Roman numerals could indicate more information than Arabic numerals. For example, we can use capital Roman numerals to indicate major chords versus lowercase and minor chords. They tell us where a certain chord's root is in a given scale, and they can tell us whether a chord is in root position or in inversion. But more than that, they can help us to understand that chords within a key have a specific function. For example, we took a look at the tonic and dominant chords and how no matter what key you're in, the 1 and the 5, or the tonic and dominant, always maintain that function. And we're going to look a little bit today at what those functions are, as well as looking at how Roman numerals exist in minor mode, and why their qualities are just a bit different than they are in major. So let's get started.
In our previous lecture, we spoke about how each chord in the major scale has a given name, and that name helps us to remember the chord's function. You should know these names for future reference. When we harmonize the minor scale, we see that the names remain the same, although the qualities of each chord do change. Now, if you remember from your scales, the minor scale comes in 3 different forms: natural, harmonic, and melodic. So which one do we use? Well, when we're writing the 5 and the 7 chord, we tend to use the harmonic minor scale, which means we're going to have to manually raise that leading tone. But when we write the 3 chord, we tend to use the natural minor scale, which makes the 7th scale degree natural, not raised.
This might be a good time to review your notes about the different forms of minor scale. Now, in the harmonization of the minor scale, we tend not to use the melodic too often, although it does occur. We primarily use the harmonic minor for the 5 and the 7 chord, and then the natural minor for the 3 chord. And those are the 3 chords that contain that 7th scale degree.
Another thing you're going to want to commit to memory are the qualities of each chord as they occur in major and minor. I find that the best way to do this is to compare the major and minor together to see which chords are the same in quality, and which ones are opposite, and which ones are just plain weird. Here we have a side-by-side comparison between major and minor chords of the same scale degree. And you can see when looking and comparing chords, there are only 2 chords in the entire scale that are the same, whether you're in major or minor. And this, of course, is because of that raised leading tone. Essentially, in harmonic minor, we take that leading tone that we find in major and apply it to the 5 and the 7 chord. But the vast majority of chords, when comparing major to minor, reflect a kind of opposite quality. Now, I know major and minor are not opposites, but if we look, we can see that the chords that are major in one key tend to be minor in the other, and vice versa. And that leaves us with just one chord remaining, the 2 chord. And this one's neither the same nor that perceived opposite. It's a little bit weird because it's minor in major, and then in the minor mode, we find it as a diminished triad. You may want to push pause and take a screenshot of this diagram. By thinking about the differences in this way, I think it's easier to remember what's what.
Let's take a moment and analyze some chords in the minor mode, and we'll work together to see if we can get the right answer.
Here we have a chord in B minor, and again we're going to follow that same process of beginning with the lowest pitch and seeing if we can stack thirds. So we're going to move that E over to here, and we're going to look for a note a third above that note. So we're going to be looking for a G, and going into the chord we can see that there is indeed a G in the soprano note here, and we're going to move that over. Then we're going to see if we can find the note a third above that G, which is a B. And when we look at that chord, we can see that there is no B. And if that's the case, then that remaining note will go a third below our starting note. All of this work now gives us a triad in its most compressed root position format. And now we can see that the root is C sharp, and C sharp in the key of B minor is the 2nd scale degree. so we're going to use a lowercase 2. And if we remember that in minor, the 2 is always diminished, we will know that this is a 2 diminished chord. And because that third, the E, is in the lowest voice in our original chord, we're going to put it in first inversion. And we indicate that, if you recall, by putting a little superscript 6 next to the Roman numeral. Now, if you don't memorize that the 2 is diminished, you can always do the math on it and see that there are 2 minor thirds that make up this triad.
So this is the process that you're going to want to follow from this point forward. And I do want you to memorize the terms related to each part of the scale. Remember, those are tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, and leading tone chord. Those are important to memorize. And I also want you to memorize the qualities of these triads as they exist in both major and minor mode. And those are 2 important elements or sets of data that I would like you to memorize. And keep working on identifying these chords. And the next step in this process is to build triads based on a given Roman numeral. And you're going to see some of that in your worksheets. And that process is simply the same process but in reverse. So if I'm asking for a 5 chord in root position, you're going to build that chord on the 5th scale degree. Okay, well, that's all the time we have today for today's lesson. And until next time, this is Dr. Sander, and keep it simple.